Hello, everybody, and welcome back to On the Workbench. We're on episode 43. Now we're pushing our way towards 50. This one, I always try and do something, just something different each time instead of just sort of repeating the same thing over and over again. And I thought, just given the way things are right now, this could be kind of interesting. And it's all about what happens after you do something like a live stream, as opposed to doing a more structured tutorial like this. Yeah. I also wanted you to see a direct comparison between painting with acrylics and painting with oils. Now, unfortunately, one of these is still drying, so it sort of gives itself away a little bit. But one of these is painted in acrylics, one is painted in oils. Actually, the easiest way, forget the whole maybe it's a little bit shinier because it's still wet. Look at the blends on the shields of the two different, look at that. Now, this one here, I was trying to do some weathering on that too, but the smoothness of the shield over here, that betrays the fact that this is oils. And oh, look at these stripes here too. Yeah, everything about the one on the left was easier than the one on the right. And when one is easier, that means if you're doing a whole unit like I was here, that means a whole bunch of the rest also get easier. Now, we're doing this in oils. Also, I wanted to show that we did have a little bit of a return to the oil brushers as well. Revenge of the oil brushers. Just a couple of them, I think maybe this was the other one that I brought in. Now, I wanted to show something here because you've seen me using my oils, which is, you're obviously still using these. Now, let's open this up here. Oh, jeez. Again, that happens with the oil brushers, and I'll show you here. Watch this. Now, this can't, holy smokes. And I just loosened this thing up yesterday. So just less than 24 hours ago. Now, see all that gunk that's piled up in there? Look at all that. We'll throw some out here. Okay. But I used to think this was a relatively easy application, right? Well, yeah. I used to think that until I could get the exact same. Wow. Holy smokes. Look at that. I can't even close this thing all the way right now. So, and I store these things up straight up and down for the most part. I mean, they spend 99% of their time in the vertical position. We'll just call it that. So there was another one that I'd used. I think this is the, what is this, the red primer one. I'll throw some of that out here too, just to have it. But look at all this stuff here. And I've tried to prevent that in every way, shape, and form, but it just kind of happens. Now, oh, I don't know. Hear that sound? Hear the agitator? That's in my own homemade version. All right, now let's do. Oh, wasn't that easier? I'm thinking that it is. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but to me, that registers as a whole heck of a lot easier. So we're going to throw out some of our cadmium yellow medium here. And again, look at it. And this is, you know how many times I've used this. Do you see lots of paint gunked around here? This is a cheap, I mean, less than $1 for this jar. Actually, probably just a matter of 20 cents for this jar. So I'm thinking that this is, I'm going to throw out some yellow here. Just look at the difference here. Look at I really wanted to emphasize this because people have seen me use the oil brushes. They know that I like them. It's not like I would not get them anymore. But I've got an option now. There's a little burnt sienna. You can hear that sound. That's your agitator floating around in there. And again, you can see that's after doing the agitation process, right? Yeah, look at that. I mean, there's easy, right? Why make things difficult? Now here's one of the raw umbers. Again, you can hear the sound of that shaking there of the. Here, let's get this right there. I mean, it just. And again, okay, I could take my sponge here. I'll just kind of. It's back to basically brand new. And you've seen how many times have I used these bottles? Do you see any? And me, I'm messy. I mean, you see what my hands look like, right? Look at what this looks like. Do any of my paint jars look like this? Any like the acrylic ones which are actually hard to get the stupid paint out of. But I'm looking at this, and I looked and said, "What the heck?" And I just compared it to my bottle. So I got one bottle, and I'm sorry to kind of go off on a tangent here. Now the reason this happened is because I dropped the bottle in the palette. Otherwise, this would be just as pristine, but I literally dropped the bottle on the palette with a bunch of wet paint, and it rolled across the palette. So that's what it took to get a dirty jar of paint for me. And you know me, filth is kind of my middle name. I mean, it's just, I get things very messy. But this is like opposite of messy. Yeah, so we're going to do this again. Look, we got, you say, oh, we're going to just clean that. Bam. You don't see the paint, and I use this in every single episode multiple times. So, something to think about. I'm just tossing it out there. Now, I know this is a long intro here, but this is another important thing. So, when I do a one-off figure on the live stream, it's kind of mostly done, and that's the end of it. When I do multiple figures, though, and by multiple I mean more than 5, I'll get a figure like this guy here who is mostly done. He's mostly done, right? Then we're going to get figures that are sort of like this, that are, well, partially done. You can see there's blending and other stuff going on there, right? But then you also end up with stuff like this, where it's just the original primer and a couple of glazes of stuff that are now all dry. So we've got wet oils, we got dry oils. We have miniatures in essentially 3 main stages, technically 4 or 5, because this one, you can see it's not even as far along as this one. That is kind of what you end up with when you're doing live streams, because, well, you're there's always a new audience cycling in. So you're that's why we've got freehand on these axes here, but nothing down here. You're just, and like there's no outlining here. You're always trying to show the new people in the room something that they haven't seen yet. So you're constantly kind of going back, reviewing things, but it does leave you with, I mean, you got the leggings on one and skin tones on one and nothing here. So what we're going to do now that we've got, and this is the same palette that I was using. This is kind of a continuation palette. Normally you see me lay out the colors in front of you, and it's a brand new palette. This is, you're seeing what life is like after a live stream and how I kind of get caught up on things, because this is, again, it's another unit that has to be done for a commission. And by the way, a lot of this paint is dry just 24 hours later. So what we're going to do is we're going to mostly focus on this guy here and sort of get him caught up and anything. I think the rest of them are more caught up now than others. So we're mostly going to focus on him, and I'll kind of show you how we even just get to this point right here. And we're going to do that next. Let's get ourselves caught up real quick, at least, again, to where we are on this one, because where we are on here is where we are on most of the other ones. But then we're going to do this kind of a second stage catch up here too. Let's just start with this. So, okay, cloak first. Cloak is actually pretty darn simple. Pretty simple here. So we're just going to grab ourselves a brush. We've got ourselves, you can see I have a blending brush kind of in progress over here. And I'm going to just throw out a little bit more of the, is this the, sky blue here. This is one of your oil brushes right there. Throw that out there. But look at this. I've been using it a couple times, and I've tried to clean that stuff off, and it's very difficult. Very difficult. So, again, cost-wise, the containers that I made are going to win out pretty much every single time over anything else, basically. And now we're starting to see other conveniences. Cost, convenience, a lot of that sort of good stuff. Again, I'm just saying. Here, we just got the usual white spirit / mineral spirits. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue in here so that it doesn't get too green. This is my Payne's gray right here. We're going to, now, I'm going to put a link in for as long as it lasts. Hopefully you get to see it while it's still there. The original Twitch episode okay, where I painted these in acrylics. And I'll put that link up there. Now, if you're seeing it long after that has disappeared, because apparently even when you're partnered, they just disappear. They don't stay there. There is no permanent videos there. There's different, one is 14 days, the other one I guess is 60 days. So one way or another, they're going away. However, I take them, remaster them, and just like the episode I posted the other day where I was painting me, well, that is available. That's going to be permanent once it's on YouTube. Again, I'd put some finished photos in there, just some extra little treats, right? Since, well, I can, because it's not just a live recording. I try to add a little bit more to it. Okay, so we're already starting to get caught up here on our blues, right? Let's throw in, this is going to be more of our straight up sky blue here. Yes, we are there. Now remember, this is not so much about layering. This is oils here. And if this is one of your first times watching an oil painting video, I thought this could be good. Seeing this sort of direct comparison, now that could be really, really handy for you. But just look at how this blends. And there's a couple of ways we can blend. We can just quite literally throw some paint on here and then push it around. We can do it that way. We can do it this way. I don't want to say it's the more traditional way, but it's a little less, I guess you could say a little less messy maybe, but we're not just chucking the paint on there and then pushing around with a different brush. And what's interesting is that I have to constantly remind myself when I get to finally use the oils, I have to say, oh yeah, you know what, slow down, slow down. You don't have to go super fast. You don't have to go fast. And again, this is about what happens when the oils are also dry. So we're just going to slap a few things here. Look at this. We're just going to let that just kind of mix, blend, do all the things that oils like to do. Look at that. Look at that. Now, blending brush time. And what we're going to do is pick away at that edge. And remember, what's underneath here is dry. There is no wet paint to blend it into. We're kind of, I don't want to say removing the paint, but we're scumbling, and look at this. Look at what happens there. See how that starts to smooth itself out? Let's do some of that. Well, down here too. Let's do some of that. And you can see how it gets smoother and smoother. And remember, with the oils, if you leave it sit for 15, 20 minutes, maybe even a half an hour, you can get yourself some, boy, it's even more of a smooth blend. It's pretty incredible what happens. And I find out more about it every single time. Every time I use the oils, I find out just a little something new. Just a little something new. And I hope that you can find these, like I said, as useful, especially in your army painting, because the one-off stuff, if it's a giant dragon or even just a large creature of some kind, or a big bust or something large where there's a lot of open surfaces, that one figure with oils makes a bit more sense. But just one single 28 mil figure that you're going to try and paint from start to finish, especially in one sitting, you're not maximizing your oils there. All you're doing is just sort of minimizing the oils. You're not taking advantage of all of the advantages that those offer. In some ways, you're almost doing the opposite. It's, I don't want to say the worst of both worlds, but the stuff that you could do with acrylics that would have helped you on that one-off piece, you're not able to do really. And all the stuff that you could do with oils on multiple pieces, well, you can't necessarily do those either. Hopefully that makes some sense to you, what I was just trying to get across there. Because now, to me, because I've used these so often, it's just, Oh gosh, I hate the expression conventional wisdom, especially when it's just like me and me. There's just me. Well, there is. I mean, it's kind of like developing my own conventional wisdom that yeah, single minis just really don't work, or that whole multiple figure mentality. Not necessarily armies. Doesn't have to be a whole army, but every single person, and I'm just going to make this assumption, every single person watching this thing has at least 2 dozen miniatures, busts, or something that's miniature related of some kind that needs painting. You got at least 2 dozen of those things sitting around in your house somewhere. Most of you probably got triple digits worth of stuff sitting around between busts and miniatures and flats and who knows what else you might have sitting around. And this is not, I'm not trying to paint guilt anybody here, but you you need to get through those at some point. You would like to. So maybe you paint a couple of busts at once. Maybe you paint 3 busts at once. If they're the Blackheart models bust, heck, you paint 4 at once. Because they're 1/8 scale. They're not gigantic, and they're mostly a face or skin or something like that. So you don't have to necessarily worry about a whole lot of armor because, well, they're horror and sci-fi. So maybe you do something like that. Maybe that is the approach that you take with your oils to maximize them. Maybe you never paint figures, or figures of 28 millimeter size. Maybe your thing is all 75 mil and above. Well, why not paint a couple, maybe even 3? Like I said, give it a shot. I mean, what do you have? Literally, what do you have to lose? And we're going to try and get ourselves even caught up on the sword here, because I'm pretty sure all the other ones have a certain degree of even the non-metallic stuff going on the swords as well. Look at that. It's just so easy to make that blend. Unbelievable. Now we're gonna keep going here with, we're gonna add that white, but also that touch of ultramarine blue. It keeps this lighter blue from getting too green, and I do not want that. Doesn't mean I can't highlight past here or even make things darker, because yes, I could go in with some of those glazes that you've seen me do in previous episodes. That could happen as well. No problem. Not a big deal. Okay. Yeah. That's about a bit more here. Oh yeah. Right down. Look at it. It just blends itself. Ask not what you can do for your oils, but what your oils can do for you. And now that is the one interesting thing about the live streams, is that more paragraphs and sayings are added to the Book of Wapol, like that one, and also I think there was another one of "Give me blending" or "Give me death." That was another one. That's another one. Look at this. So much easier. Where's one of the acrylic ones? I'm gonna just find one here. So it's, and this is all done with the Pro Acryls, right? But to do the same blends on this that were done on here over multiple, even on just one, but especially on multiple figures, I gotta say it was way easier with the oils. So much easier with the oils. It's way easier to get caught up from one to the next too, because I had to do a similar thing with the acrylics because, well, I did a live session, right? So doing that with the acrylics was way harder because, well, all the paint was dry. There was no option of, yeah, it's still kind of wet. I can go back and do this and that and the other. And I'm just mentioning this because, well, probably most of you aren't going to live stream, but you got stuff going on. You have either work to do, kids to take care of, kids to homeschool right now. You have other things going on that will take you away from your painting, perhaps even very suddenly. And by suddenly, I mean you got to go. You just like jump up from the table and go take care of whatever needs taken care of. So, I mean, this may be, I don't know how much this is near other people's lives, but we get held hostage by package deliveries here a lot. And this entire weekend and into tomorrow, basically the two of us are listening at the door. I mean, just as intently as we can, not even worried about doorbells, for any sign that packages are being delivered, because they just have it. Not nobody's ever stole a package here. That doesn't happen. But what happens is that the post office, for whatever reason, just says they tried to deliver it and they didn't, or they delivered it to a different house. And we have to tell them, look, we've not only been home, but neither one of us has been beyond 6 feet from the door. Which means I've got to potentially, if I was doing this any point during the day where there could be a delivery, I have to be ready to just kind of leap up out of this chair and go take care of that. Well, I'm pretty sure anyone with pets or kids, I'm sure this happens once a day, if not several times a day. You hear a sound, something happens, you hear the screams, the whatevers, and you just got to jump up. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of painting something, a crucial wash or something like that with your acrylic paints, and you're all set to do a nice juicy wet blend of something. And now instead you're running up the stairs or down the stairs to see what interesting hijinks the kids are up to, or the pets, or whatever. So that was a long-winded way of saying the oils can get you through that in a way that the acrylics just can't, because, well, I've been away from some of these figures already over 24 hours. Just because, and when I finished that stream at 6 something o'clock in the morning, I just got up from the table and walked away and just passed out. So that is something else to keep in mind. I figured you could tell what I was doing here. I just wanted to relay that potential story there. Now look at this. We just add some of those lighter. It just all blends together, and that's really without the aid of the blending brush. Now remember, with oils, you guys start thinking thinner and thinner as you move along. We are doing that now. We thin that down to make it stick, and see now it sticks over there too. Now it's going to stick over here. If I kept going with the same level of thickness, not so much. Not so much. And the reason I've got to get this, especially the robe, caught up here, I'll find, here we go. So I've got to get that blue stripe on all of these robes, and that was done with wet oils over wet oil paint. I'm going to move him kind of out of the way. A little bit out of the way. All right. Now let's get some more of the lighter blue on his cloak and on his chest. This is definitely an unusual color scheme. I don't know if I've ever really quite done something like this. It's when it's a commission. When it's a commission, you do the colors that you're asked to do, the bases that you do what you're told. Essentially, the choices, they're just not yours. Just not yours. Look at that big old brush that's kind of chewed up and beat up, and yet we could still do. Look at these. It's hard to do this with acrylic. Same brush with acrylic, it would be almost unusable. What I'm doing right here with this, look at how beat up that brush is. Acrylics can't do this. Cannot do it. And remember, if I don't like that blend, I bring over the blending brush and then take care of it that way. So I'm just trying to list the options that oils bring in. You don't have to try the oils ever at all. It's just that what would you say, the buy-in is so minimal. I mean, look, I think, what did I calculate? 4 jars of contrast paint would pretty much get you everything you need for oils for the next 4, 5, 6 years. I'm not kidding you. I'm talking brushes, white spirits, everything. The whole shoot and match for less than what, maybe 4 or at least 5 jars. of contrast paint would cost you. To me, that sounds like an equitable. You get basically a lifetime of oil painting versus potentially 3 days of contrast paints. Contrast paints don't blend like that. Sorry, they just don't. You've seen me use them. You've seen me use those things. Now, let's start to get caught up in some other areas here. And I do apologize if my oil painting videos start to sound increasingly preachy. I do apologize for that, but that's the other thing about doing live streams is we're adding kind of a mix of burnt sienna here and burnt umber. They're both a little bit on the reddish side. Both a little bit on the reddish side. We're even going to let some of that work its way into some of our skin tones here, and even where the golds are going to go. Now I am going to thin that down a touch. Again, that's some of our burnt umber as well. The sleeves, remember, if you remember from, well, if you haven't seen that first Twitch episode, you might want to see it. It'll take me a little while before I can take it into my editing software and turn it into more of a regular hard copy video. So see, we're just taking a little bit of our darker stuff here, and I want to just mark that stuff. That's going to be basically a gold trim there. And I'm doing this now so that this can actually sit here for a little bit, and then I can put my lighter layers over the top of that. We're also going to take some of that olive green. Let's hit this shit. Now we're also going to thin it down, not to the point where it's very watery, but just, a little bit thinner. Not so much because it has to be thinner to stick to something, but I want it to flow a little bit easier, and I want to be able to go thicker over the top of it. So again, that notion of thick over thin, vice versa. I think a lot of times you see me going thin over thick. You don't always see me going the other way around. But on the shields, we will be doing stuff essentially in reverse with that. So we'll make sure I'm in focus for you here. But again, we are just getting caught up here with this figure to all the other ones. And this is one of the last things here. And then we'll do some stuff on the sword as well to get ourselves caught up. And again, this is not a black lining type of situation here. Now look at what we got here. So I did that on purpose. Because remember on one of the acrylic ones, I was trying to do some streaks and some weathering right on that. Well, okay, what are oils good for? They're good for stuff like that. I think you can see this. Boom. I mean, look at that. It was so much smoother, so much more subtle, so much more everything. It just does it all. Look at it. I can even wipe some of that paint away right there. A couple last things. Let's get ourselves a little bit of darker skin tone here. That is, ironically enough, a rust color there. I'm going to toss that on Yield, Scabbard, and a few other areas, maybe in his hair. Not quite sure if he'll be red-haired or not. And I gotta say, too, might not even finish these all completely. That's not quite what this is about. It's not an army painting thing. It's more a discussion on the advantages that oils can provide. Think of it as more of a theory type episode rather than a practical step by step by step. You do this, then you do this. I'm trying to introduce that a little bit more now because that, like the sculpting videos, yeah, it's going to be about sculpting, but it's going to be about converting and why do you sculpt? Why would you sculpt? I just thought some of these things, it's different than what you're going to get. You can go on YouTube and type in how to paint non-metallic metals and find 75 tutorials, and at least half of them will be really, really good. Another quarter of them will be pretty good. There'll be some that are not so great. that you can find that. I'm trying to do the things that you can't just, well, it's the non-Walmart shopping, right? It's the non-Walmart videos. We're trying to do things here that you just wouldn't randomly run across on YouTube. So there we go. See, we got this kind of in place here. Let's do a little bit of green. Nope, that green is still active enough. It even has a little bit of flock sitting in it, and I'm not quite sure how that got there. I told you, it's messy, right? I told you things get messy. All right, so that's gonna get us settled pretty well now with this guy here, so that we can move in and move along to the next stage. Now that we've got him caught up, we gotta get these other guys caught up here. And what we'll do first, especially because it's just because it's gonna be fun, so I'm gonna do some shields here. We're gonna do that next. Like I said before, we're going to do some non-metallic gold, or at least work on the shields just in general. Okay, now some are going to have more than less. More or less. And look at that, all that, see all the greens and everything that's been developed on it. Let's keep going here. Another guy that's shield time. I also have one of these guys right here. Let's just get these side by side. We'll make it so you can see them both. Now, I may have to turn these one way or another, but you get the drift. Payne's Gray we're going to start with here. So we're really just working on the shields, and I'm just going to make a there. Just making a quick note. And we're going to get ourselves a little bit of this darker Payne's Gray, which is, look here, it's kind of looking just like basically a dark blue. Don't have to be neat about it, that's for sure. Do not have to be neat about it. Now, we are going to take a bit of our white here and a touch of that lighter skin tone to make it be not quite so pure white. And over the top, like so. And I was counting on some of the Payne's Gray to just look at that. It's blending itself instead of me having to paint several layers of this. Because I had to do that with the acrylics, even with the white. Now, I think you can see what, yeah, you can still see that. I had to change my angle. And maybe here I'm actually going to get a little bit of my white spirits in there just to help that flow a little bit more. Now we've got a couple bands to do over here with our white. And the idea is, say I want to let some of the paint there and the sky blue area get a little chance to, well, not necessarily dry, but at least sort of stable. Look at that. See how that brown is mixing in? Because look at that. That's most likely some of the raw sienna there and raw umber that are mixing in. They're just they've gotten into the brush, and then the brush spreads that around. And now we have this nifty little bit of a soft shading. Sort of like what we're trying to do here, except it's one layer of paint. One layer instead of a bunch of layers. One instead of a bunch. We will do a similar thing over here. Again, some Payne's Gray. Some Payne's Gray in between the lines of these panels. It's almost just, I don't want to say straight out of the tube, but it's straight out of my mixed paint. Right, straight out of my 50-50-ish mix of white/mineral spirits and oil paint. All right, That's in place. We will take our same sort of off-white here. It is not pure white, it is just an off-white. It's just an off-white. And look at this. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to get the biggest batch of paint off of that brush with the idea that if there's a little less of that paint on there, it's going to be scumbled and it's going to start to mix with the other colors that are on here. I'm going to get rid of some of that. See, look at that. See how it's starting to pick up the other colors there? Look at that. Look what's happening. It might even be more dramatic over here. Yes, I think on this stripe here, look at this. Look what's happening. It's being mixed with the other colors that are already there. So therefore, this is why there's no base coat. There's no layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. There's just, oh, I don't know, pushing the paint around and blending. Because look at that. How many layers did we really do there? We did basically one layer, and then we pushed it around. The magic oil's right there. And oh my gosh, we're nowhere near white. I mean, we're just up here. That's barely a value 3. This is maybe a 2, with again 1 being your lightest. Now I can go in here. Look at this. Look at what I can do. Look what I can do with it and take advantage of all of that nice white color. Look at that. It's practically like shaded freehand, right? Oh, wait to see what happens here on the pants. I mean, wow. Yeah. Well, I was happy about it. I mean, maybe you guys won't be as happy as I was, but hey. All right, we're playing with shields. Let's see if we can't do something in the way of, some knot work here. I'm going to do this and do this. It's going to be sort of that maybe faded paint look here instead of that, what would you say, freshly painted look. Maybe this is going to be a little bit more worn look here. And I do believe the way this has to go is to connect here. This one will connect over here. And remember, if I can always go back and do some of those pin line washes over it. In fact, it's not just if we're going to do it, it's just a matter of when we're going to do that. So that will happen, but this is it's a simple pattern. I've done this a bazillion times on round shields around a boss, which is that little central knob right there. So, and see how it's already getting that kind of lived in look right there. And we haven't even done any kind of glazes over this yet. And it's wet oil paint too. Just keep in mind, it's wet oil paint over wet oil paint. It most definitely is. Yeah. It even looks, here's the funny thing, it looks painted on. But not that kind of painted on. I think you know what I mean. Say like right there, I'm not even maybe going to define that so much. Maybe I'll just work on other sections here and refine that more. Who knows? I might outline it. Might feel the need to do that, but for now, we'll just leave that as it is. Now, I do see something here that I want to... Wow, okay, so I'm going to just throw some more of this right here. Remember, it's all about getting things caught up. Well, this was not actually as caught up as the other one was, so we're going to... The one that I was trying to catch up to this, well, now I've got to catch this one up to the one I was just catching up to. Say that 10 times fast. Now we got our blending brush once more. What do? We take this, we drag this along. And remember, this will work even if the paint underneath it is wet. And again, we've just, bam, real quick blend there. Very, very easy, very simple. Now I'm going to throw that shield back over there. What do we have here? We have ourselves another different shape like this. Like that now. We're going to, again, go into our bit of an off-white here. Let's do our little checkerboards right here. And again, as I here, let's just take a little different tack on this. We're gonna mix some of this. It's actually a little bit of green in there, and it's just gonna be a different form of gray. See it? Look at that. Not as bright as it was. It just took that a little bit off of the brightest white. See what's happening here with these? They're just, it's like self shading. It takes away a lot of the work for you. And I'll say this right now, and it's going to be difficult for someone to approach me and say, "Hey, would you just use our oil paints?" Because I'm kind of liking what I've got. I'm kind of liking what I got. Oh, and you also haven't seen these yet. And it's not necessarily related to all this, but you just got to see it. I want you to. Because again, not everybody does the Twitch thing. Not everybody can see that. And I do believe I showed these on the recent oil painting session. Okay. I'm going to set this aside real quick. And I have right here, look at that. That is fluorescent orange oil paint. Not kidding. I'm not kidding whatsoever. I'm just going to take my light down. There we go. So look at how that paint is bouncing. Look at that color. It's doing all, look at that crazy thing it's doing. We tested this against some of the acrylic stuff. And look at that. See how it makes the camera go bonkers? The acrylic fluorescent does the exact same thing. So to me, that is all. It's all good. I like it, and I've got the green. I will try and get maybe some of the other ones, but this is the other thing. It says it's $15 a tube. So to me, that is not unusual because I already have other tubes of oil paint here that are more expensive than that by $7, $8, $9. Tubes of a similar size. So that the luxury oil paint colors can get definitely pricier. Your basics, the ones that you see me use all the time, well, that's a different story. Very different story there. There's a reason why you see me using umbers and siennas and cadmiums and that sort of thing, because they are, I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen, but they're definitely nowhere near the specialty level of some of those, like the brown, or was that the madder purple or something like that? Purple madder, I think it was called. Yeah, that purple madder is expensive. Very expensive. Now I'm just gonna, while I've got this here, again, this is all part of the army painting experience. I liked what I did over on the other one. I'm just gonna do it again. I'm just doing do it again. And I don't want to wet this down too much. It's just enough to get the flow, because I don't want it to actually seep down into the crevices of these boards. I want it to sort of look like it's been painted on, which is hilarious. But see how the blue is mixing with it? What it does is I got to go back. I've got to go back to the original paint color here and then just get some fresh paint. So here's what we're doing freehand wise. There's going to be some decent amount of freehand, especially on these shields here. This is going to connect all the way over to here. This is going to connect all the way over to here. It's just, it goes right around the boss there. Again, thin that down. We'll do the same here. And I've just got, I think, a couple more of these to it. One more to attach. That's it. Just this one. I can go back with, again, this is not pure white, not even close to it. Not even close. Because I also want to have the bright highlights on that boss and the other parts of the shield. I want those to sort of command the eye rather than painted on white stuff on a shield. And that should do it. Now, I'm just going to look here real quick to see are there any other shields. Okay. Next things next, we have to do our little crow, because these are supposed to be storm crow warrior thingies, whatever they are. Which means we are going to take some of our lighter white. It's thinned down. It is nice and thin. But you can see how it starts to mix right away. It doesn't take long before the stuff underneath, which is wet, starts to mix in. And I don't mind that because it's giving it a little bit of shading. But what I'll do then is we're going to thin it down even some more. Thin it down some more. And see how it covers once it's been thinned, but it only covers so much. I got to go back and get some fresh lighter color here. And the idea is I paint in this, de facto white here. And then I'm just going to leave it. Just going to leave that sit there. Let it, again, not dry, although let's say I'm doing the army painting thing and I've got a bazillion figures out, which, I already do. And I do let that dry completely. Then it'll be that much easier to paint the black over the top. Now we've got a couple of shields to do with this. And just painting the crow on there. I'm just going to do that over here. I'm going to get this thin down. Get some more of my white here. Orientate this the way we need it to be. Like as soon as it stops covering, that's when I know I've got to go back and get some fresh paint. But for now, it still covers. And I always have my white spirits handy. And as I mentioned, I think in a previous episode, it will settle. So all the gunk and the oils and all that will sink to the bottom. And now I wouldn't. I guess you could just sort of pour that down the drain if you want. Because it's not going to do what acrylics do, and which is basically they sort of reconstitute in your pipes and form a nice big old acrylic blob inside your pipes. I know because I had that happen to me, because I used to take my watercolor tray that I was using for my acrylics and I would wash it out in the laundry sink, and the next thing you know, my laundry sink was not draining anymore. And it's because that dried acrylic paint just sort of reconstituted in a giant acrylic mass. So look at that. See how I let that sit for a few minutes, and it just, all I can say is it sort of reconstituted itself, and it just became a bit more stable for things. Look at this. I can just fade that even more. I look to see if there's any other swords I need to get caught up on. There's one. Oh, plus he also needs a little crow dude here. So what I'm going to do is hit this sword because we want to keep going with the same colors. We'll do our little crow over here, and then we're going to move on to, now we'll move on to the gold in the shields, because I think that'll be good for you to see. All right. Crow goes there. And it doesn't have to be any kind of perfect, right? Because we're still going to do our little kind of outline there in black. Now it could be I may even have to paint the Payne's gray outline. I might actually have to paint that with a thicker paint, because if the thinner paint, remember, the thinner paint's not sticking, there's only one way it can go. You got to go thicker. So it can't be much thinner than this. See, it still covers. Even when it's thin, I just have to keep getting fresh paint. So look at the fresh paint, and it covers. So what we shall do next is we're gonna play with a little bit of our white over here. Maybe a bit less shading of those checkerboards. So next up, we're going to do a lot of the golds here. We'll take care of that next. Let's dive into these golds over here, and just like with the non-metallic, well, say gold on with acrylics, gold is seldom just, well, shades of yellow or shades of yellow and tan. There's orange, there's green, there's purple, there's all that kind of good stuff. And hopefully we get a whole bunch of that. Look at this. It's already going to start turning a little bit different color here, just because it's going to mix into, it's going to slightly blend with what's already here. It's already starting to blend just a bit. Boy, the thumb palette takes on a whole new dimension with oils, because it actually just kind of stays wet there, which is pretty wild. And you could just, now of course, if I don't stick my finger in there, I can actually still use that, but let's proceed here. Now again, I may not be able to do every single one of these. I'm not looking to have this be another 4-hour video or something like that, because that session that I did, it was at least 3.5 hours. At least 3.5 hours. Now, a lot of that was reviewing things and going, oh look, there's new people in the room. Let's take this and do this again. That's how I ended up with this kaleidoscope of figures that were partially painted to some degree in some areas over others. So I'm not looking to do a live session in video form here. But what I am looking to do is spread around some of these golds here where needed. Also thinking, well, what's going to reflect off of this? Like here, is his face going to be reflecting off of that? Is what's going to be is there anything going to be reflecting here? Which way is this tilted? Is it tilted towards, say, the sky, or is it tilted towards the ground? And let's just keep moving along. Keep moving on. Let's find another shield here. We'll do the same thing. And you will see how this is how we get greens the easy way, right? Because that's wet oils there. Look at this. Yeah, wet oils there. It's literally turning that kind of basically like a yellow ochre, more like a raw sienna type color. It's sort of turning that a little bit on the greenish side, just by virtue of it mixes together. Why is it doing that? Well, because a lot of the color that was put there was like a semi-glaze of the olive green. And you say, well, so what's with the green and the golds there? Why would you want that? It's supposed to contrast with the blues. Well, if gold is so shiny and reflective and everything else, wouldn't it reflect a lot of the blues that are around it? So, again, another little thing to think about. I always try and toss out things for you to think about. Maybe I don't mean to make it too many things to think about at once. But we're sticking with our relatively thin stuff here. And we're going to go back and we will blend. We'll do all that stuff. But I'm just trying to hop through here. Well, where's my... Okay, you're going to go over there. What about you? There's a couple here where it's just the boss and then the stuff around it. But I also want to think about some of the helmets as well, and some of the sword hilts. and handles. And again, like I said, I'm going to do some more. There will be much more refining after this is over, because I've essentially, I've got half of my lights on, just so that this doesn't get burned out with all of the reflection of the oils that are wet. So I have to go back in here later and just do things that I can't see. There's areas that I can't even see. So kind of painting this half blind, which is definitely interesting. Definitely interesting. See, look at that. We'll just let that. If I let that mix, right, and I could even do, look at this. I even just took a few little shots of this kind of yellowish color here and made those go over the top. Now I'm also going to think about making this maybe a bit darker, because golds. All right, there's that. What else is? I'm just looking for all the shields here that still have to be done. I'm gonna here. Let's do the other shield that's got the similar shape to it here, and then we shall swing back around. So again, for the folks that are wondering, this is some miniatures here. You've seen the Snake Man. You've seen I think one of the very first Mears miniatures things that I did on the Patreon page was the sort of wraith-like figures that were relatively big. Some of those guys, those were really fun. We did those in acrylics, but if you recall that I had to match a color scheme that was really, really specific and very tough to translate, because there was a lot of the shading was very simple, and all of a sudden then I had to make the shading very complex, but they still had to look alike. And I just mention this because it's been a problem in the past, where someone would say, well, that doesn't look like black. Well, that's because black is not, that the figure that they had gotten previously was literally just painted with black with no shading, and now I've got to try and make it look like it has shading, but yet also not just use black paint. So I get questions about doing the commission painting thing a lot, so that's why I try and sneak in these little tidbits. I'm assuming that for some of you, this is the reason why you're watching these, is because you're thinking, maybe not necessarily for a living, but maybe a supplement to some income or whatever. So I try to maybe throw in answers to questions that aren't even asked. So hope you don't mind while I do that. See, now that was painted in earlier, but it's still, see, it can still mix with that existing color. That's just, it's the power of the oils. And I could even, if I was just doing this, how shall I say, in a more controlled way, where it's just me working on the figures, I could be a bazillion times more efficient than this. Like I said, doing this in the video form it's less efficient. It sort of breaks up the possibilities of the oils as far as making things go faster. But that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But I still try to film it for you. I mean, especially now, I'm always trying to get you something every day, if not a live session somewhere, then one of these. And I just, something to me said, there is value in seeing something like this just kind of, I don't know, pick up in the middle, instead of that clearly defined start and end point that I think you're sort of used to seeing to a degree. Like I said, structured tutorials are all very nice and well. They have definitely a massive place, but there's more to it than just that. More to it. Now, I may even need another segment on the oils here. We'll see what happens. I don't know. We'll see. What we're going to do now is go back around here and let's start to play with some more stuff here. Like, can you see that? Yes. We're just going to start doing this kind of thing here because we wanted to speed up the oils. Now this is the actually thick paint here. This is not thin. This is actually, look at how thick that is. You can see there's a big old kind of, well, there's also the hair right there we're going to get rid of. Can you see this? Okay, now you can. So see, there actually, because it's thicker, that actually was better. Look at this. Look at that. If that was super thin, I couldn't do what I just did there. And that's not a dry brush. That was just me sort of dragging the brush over that area. That's all it was. Okay, now that I've got, yeah, I'm going to do a little bit with the here, green. I mean, that's literally, quite literally, just straight up green there. Throw some here, maybe throw some there. We got a blending brush. Blending brush. What does Mr. Blending Brush want to do? He's going to do a couple of things. He's not just going to blend this, but it's also going to change the direction of the brush strokes. Look at this. Now they're all going this way. It's going to happen over here. It's going to happen over here. It's going to happen right here. So we're actually changing. We're putting in directional strokes where I didn't have any. Didn't have any directional strokes there, and now I do. And look at how that just gets relatively smooth right there. Let's think about this on the sword hilt here. Definitely makes sense to have that green, right? Because it's sitting there right next to blue. How could it not have some kind of... Now, it wouldn't necessarily be a blue reflection. Not necessarily a blue reflection, but definitely that's where the green comes in. What do yellow and blue make? They make green. They make green. Oh, we're just going to hit that. Now, what I'll probably do is maybe just skin tone on one guy. Like I said, it depends on what I have time for here. I didn't want this to be a 3-4 hour video like that live session was. It's just to give you some new possibilities, something new to think about. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Blending Brush here. There. Always got to... Now, cleaning is a relative term. But I'm going to see, now we've got a few little variations in that. We can now we're starting to think a little bit thinner here. We've got some... That is your titanium white mixed with your cadmium yellow. Again, thinking horizon line now on the boss there, on the shield. Going to even start to think about what we're doing on his helmet. Now we got a bunch of little rivets here, so I don't want this to get too light, but remember I can always go back in with those nifty little pin line glazes and do some more with those. Yeah, see, look at it. It's got green on one side, it's got a little bit of gold on the other, and it's just so easy peasy. And look at this. We can even, here, let's do something like this. We're going to take some of our... I'm making a little bit of a glaze here. Little bit of a glaze. This is your white spirits. Because we had some overflow there. Look at that. Nice. Again, one of those little pin line washes. And now we're going to take a less thinned down version of that. Let's put some trees in our little horizon line here. That is with one of those really beat up Winsor Newton Series 7s. And I mean beat up. There's 2 or 3 hairs left. Useless for acrylics. Oh, so perfect for oils. Because look at that. It's all over wet oil paint. Now I'm going to make this even thinner with the idea that we do something like, say, that. Look at that. Say I can push that, scumble that around, make it look a little bit more like some sort of weathering. Now I'm also just loading up on some of the white spirits there. And now we have ourselves some gold over here. That's extra fun. We'll set him aside and let's play with one of the. Let's play with this one here. This is a little different type of shield design. And remember, as I paint this stuff, what's happening? This stuff is having a chance to, again, not dry, but at least just kind of settle in place. And it's going to be easier for me to go over the top of that than if I was to force it right now and do that. This is where multiple figures is just a huge help. No, not a help, but where it gives you the value of the oils. Having multiple figures to work on. Because you can essentially just kind of walk away from. It's like you're walking away from the table without walking away from the table. You're still able to get things done. So I have multiple projects going at once, and it doesn't have to be 3 armies or 17 bolt action armies. It doesn't have to be like that, like it is for me. It could be a 2 busts, some zombie-side figures, a kill team, a Blood Bowl team, or a couple of 75 mil figs. Use the material to your best advantage, and instead of really just sort of forcing yourself to do. Here, let's do another little fun thing with the gold. We're going to take that's that sort of phthalo or alizarin crimson. Sorry, we're mixing it with that cadmium red deep to get sort of an orange. And I'm just thinking, oh boy, think of what would happen if we could try our fluorescent orange right now. But nope, I want to mix that. I want to see what it's like to try and make my own oil brusher out of it. And then we'll do a special video on those fluorescent. We'll do a special object source lighting with oils, with the fluorescent oils. You will see it first here. It'll be shown here first, sure. You'll see it here first because that's what it's all about. It's all about experimentation. It's all about those experiments. Again, some lighter tones here. All about. Look at that. Because that, if I had done that maybe 15 minutes ago, it would have been a whole lot more difficult to do that. I don't want to say impossible, but it just would have been more difficult. But the paint literally had a few minutes to just sort of sit there, collect it. So yeah, like this. Wouldn't matter how thin or thick it was. Wouldn't matter at all. Wouldn't be possible. It just, sometimes the wet paint just says nope, not happening right now. I don't care how thick you make me or whatever. I'm just not going to cooperate. And that is the point when you say, aha, okay, I'm just going to work on something else. Because forcing it, not going to help. Forcing that issue is just going to lead to a big mess and frustration, which you're not wanting. So like a little bit of cleanup right there. just a little bit of cleanup. Now let's think about some golds here on his helmet. Like you do. Some of our look at. I'm just going to take a big old batch of it right there. We've got our blending brush. And we've got oranges, we got browns. We're orientating the brush the way we want it to be. Trying to get that brush orientated the right way here. All right. There you go. Yeah. Now, down here, real quick. So we've got our sky blue here, right? Well, let's see if we can't reflect that in a couple of places. Like, oh, I don't know, right there where it should be reflected. Take some of it away as we blend it. So there we go. We have a little bit of our reflected light there. Now, this is going to be interesting. So what we're doing here is we're taking some of our, that's our titanium white. And I'm just going to see if I can, because basically at this point it's practically part of the golds, because if I don't do those eyes now, I'm just going to end up hitting all of the gold that I've got. So I'm just trying to do a little bit of an edge here. This has been obviously thinned down. But as always with it, we see that line is broken. It's not a solid line of light all the way across. While I've got it, I'm going to hit that real quick. Like I said, this is how you keep that line moving. You say, you know what, I got the right color for this. I'm just going to use it here. All right, that little nice light dot on your gold there. And on the back of his shield here. So we say we want to maybe, yeah, if we do another little, almost like a gem-like highlight there. Okay, let's take some of our darker browns here. That's the green and the burnt umber over here. Let's give ourselves a horizon line now. And look in the form of basically some trees to make that darker. Then I'm gonna work on a couple of our rivets there. Gonna grab me some of this orange over here, because we have plenty of yellow and such in our gold. We got some greens too, but now I'm going to try and thrust in a little bit of orange because it's right next to all this blue over here, and all of a sudden that starts to, so it doesn't necessarily make it so much lighter. It's a little bit like we're shifting the color. So remember, we want the orange, the greens, that sort of stuff. Well, now we have it. Now we've got some of that in our golds here. Here's my blending brush. Almost like we're doing a little bit of sky earth along the side of this. Look at this. We're going to blend those two together and then also make the brush strokes go the way we need those to. Now, let's not forget we wanted to actually have a little bit of green here on the underside of this. Another reason for the green here is because there's a lot of green on the base. There's a lot of foliage because they're supposed to be forest bases. And that's another reason. And also all the blue that's everywhere else too. So kind of a multi-purpose thing. Do the same thing. We're just gonna look at that couple of highlights as you do it. So there's some gold on that shield. We're gonna let that sort of sit there now. Okay, I can even just do a little quickie damage line there. Just gonna get a few things along the edge there, sharpen that up, and all right, we're gonna say I'm just gonna do the rest of the golds myself because, like I said, I don't want this to be a bazillion hours long. We got to do freehand on scabbards. We've got to do freehand stripes along here. So that's gonna be kind of our focus. Is a lot of the freehand, as much of it as we can do, the stripes, and more stripes. So it's all about stripes, and that's gonna happen next. We're back, and it's stripey time. Now, stripes, freehand, a few little different things here. Now, we're going to begin with this dark stripe right here. So I'm going to put that in first, and then we're actually going to have to let that just sort of, like I said, it's got to dry on its own. Now, this also, I'm going to start with it being sort of a not quite so thick here. It all depends on how dry this is. But look at that, how smooth the blend is on that there. Remember, we've got to be direct with this. We can't. We basically got one brush stroke and that's it. As soon as you start to dab away it. Now, if this was dry underneath, not a big deal, but it is definitely not going to be dry underneath because we were painting these earlier. And I'm just going to turn this here, and look at how I'm going to offset that stripe. So this is another fun thing to do with the undulation like this, is we just sort of offset it there. There. Now, if some of the other underneath color does blend in there, it's not the end of the world because it also starts to provide a little bit of shading. Now, you're also going to see this be extra shiny. So don't be too horrified by that. Because, well, it's relatively thick, relatively wet. Okay, and then we'll just call that good enough. And we'll just blast through these real quick here. And I want to do some of the scabbard freehand. Like I said, I didn't do the gold on this one yet. I'll get to that. Kind of in between segments here. I said it's sort of a special episode. It was not every single. I have some tutorials that I've planned for months in advance, and then there's ones like this where I just say, "Ooh, there's some value in showing this," and then I'll just kind of do it. And with something like this, it's hard to replicate something like this, where I've done part of these in a live stream. And again, not all of you can see those or have whatever. You don't necessarily want to be doing the Twitch thing. Well, I'm just going to try and show them to you the regular way. All right, now, and here too, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to get some dark just on one side there. And the reason I want to get all of the stripe things here is because this, again, maybe not dry, but it will definitely have a chance to settle in place, be drier instead of just freshly applied paint. Because I think there was stuff with the gold and other things you saw where the paint had a chance to to chill out for a bit, and it was easier to paint at. So we're doing that offset thing again over here. Oh, and there's also something I need my full regular lights for as well. So now this is a little bit thicker, and you can see that even though it's thicker, it still actually covers really well. I always say if it's not covering, you got to go one way or the other, thinner or thicker, and here thicker is covering. The thinner covers less, so we make it thicker. And by thicker at this point, it just means don't add any more of your white spirits / mineral spirits to it. All right. Now, this one's going to be tricky. This right here, and I've talked about this, the ups and downs of digital sculpting, and this is part of some of the downsides to it, is that is not a natural, that just wouldn't happen. That's just for somebody, it was kind of convenient for them to sort of just stretch that out like that and make the cloak look more dramatic. However, that's why it's made this a bit of a nightmare right here, because that is artificially just stretched out there, like someone's literally pulling on it instead of just the wind is blowing on it. And it's not to diss digital sculpting or anything like that. I mean, I would love, I don't know, someday to get a chance to do it. Not sure if and when that's ever going to happen. It would be fun, but there's just certain things that can happen, like you sculpt things that are too physically small to actually be able to print or cast. There's a lot of different things. That's also why I wanted to show you what, for those of you that have never actually tried to sculpt anything, that's why I want to get to those this month. It's not like May is sculpting month, but May is sort of it's a potpourri month. It's a blend. It's a lot of different things all together. Okay, I'm going to do, well, now that I've done that, I'm just going to do a quick little scabbard on him here. Just show you how that works. And I got plenty of other little things to be able to mix this into so it's not totally white. But it's got to be thin. I'm going to grab a scabbard. I think this is I got me another scabbard that really, this is the one I'm looking for right here. So again, you can see how much greenery there is on the bases here. All right, I got those lined up for you. Looks like it. Now the one on the left, actually in the acrylics, it was tough to do all the sort of the blending. Now this here, yeah, that is dry, so it's going to almost be a little bit more like using the acrylics. But we're going to do it in knotwork fashion, where this one goes over, this one goes under, this one goes under, and then over, and then under. But see how we're starting to lose a little bit of paint in the brush, and look what's happening. Look how it's kind of turning almost like a sienna type color. Now it's going to be changed when we get some fresh paint out here, so that's something to be aware of. And now we do a little under and over again, but see, it's picking up just enough of that color. Look at how it's sort of fading itself. It's self-shading. It's unbelievable. It's shading itself, which I just find absolutely marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. Here's some more. Like that. There we go. Real quick, right? And once this has a chance to kind of settle that, we'll do the same over there now. I'm going to pick one for doing the stripes here. Just looking for the right one, which is this one, which is this one for sure. Now let's grab one of the guys that we did previously here. Nope, it's going to have to be this guy because that banner is going to be in the way. Now look here, see how we got all that nifty blending and other things that happen there. Let's see if we can't do that. Can't do that this time. So I'm going to have, again, some of my white over here. This is actually there's this little bit of a green right here. These are literally the colors that I was mixing in to do that freehand the first time. Now we've got wet paint on here. Actually, I'm going to hit that while I'm thinking about it too. Anyways, let's begin. Another stripe over here. Now watch what happens. Watch what happens to the paint as I move this along. See how it's getting less white? See how it's turning more brown? There's your pre-shading, or it's self-shading. I don't know what other word I can use to describe it other than it's quite literally shading itself. I'm going to do that again. So we're using the fact that the brush picks up paint as it moves along the surface, which is normally, I don't want to say a negative thing, but it's normally, I don't know, that it doesn't always work in our favor. But here, oh my gosh, does it ever work in our favor? Because look at that, it's picking up that paint. It's quite literally creating shading along the way. Now, we're going to take some of this, it's a little bit darker, a little bit greener. And as long as you can see, I hope you can, because it's just so much fun. Yeah, see, look at this. As I pull this along, it's gathering up the colors that are already there. I mean, it's so much fun. Now, the shield's going to maybe block a lot of this, but we'll do it anyways. I also want to hit that belt buckle while I can, and once more, the paint just mixes and blends. So now you see how my stripes are more, you'll see how much more of a shadow that they've got when I start to add some of this lighter white now. And I can just now, look at this, get a few nifty little accents here on just certain part of the stripes instead of everywhere. And this part, it took me a while with the acrylics, just because it was all dry. I couldn't do any of this wet blending with the acrylics over that many stripes, over that many guys. And I wasn't going to paint them one at a time because that has its own type of inefficiencies anyway. But yeah, see, as I go over here into those folds now, you can see we've got our lights working there. Now, all right, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this one. So I'm even going to start with it darker than before, because this whole stripe thing here has got to be in shadow. I'm going to do this. Just do that real quick. And now stripe right there. Look at this, is wet oils over wet oils, because you can do that. You really can. We'll find another one here. Let's do this guy. Let's do this guy over here. Again, because I have the color, I'm just gonna hit this axe real quick. I know it's not about non-metallic metals, but I just want to do this real quick here while I'm thinking about it, because I also wanted to reflect the pants color there. That's another reason. It wasn't just the white there. I also wanted to reflect the pants color on that axe, because, well, it's right next to his pants, so best reflected. So we do our stripe here. We let that paint mingle. We let it blend on purpose. The thing we're normally trying to avoid is the thing that we're actually seeking to have happen, which that's why I don't say there's this rule and this rule applies 100% of the time. It's more like a if x equals this, then that, but then there's more variables because if x equals this or this, if x equals this, 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 or this, multiplied by this, you see where we're going here. Lots of different things can happen. Now, let's do our thing where we make it a little bit lighter here. I'm thinking too that's a shadow area than the inside, so we'll only do a little bit out here. Just a little bit out here. Oh, look at that right over there. Getting a few little highlights as you do. Yeah, look at that. Just look at that. So like I said, I'm just trying to show you a few little things here where it's not about painting the entire unit in one 2-hour video or something like that. That's not the goal. I wanted to show you how to kind of get things maybe caught up, right? We got these guys that went from some of them had zero paint on them whatsoever to more like the other ones. We've added our freehand in places. We've done our gold non-metallics in some places. And I got another one here. I could just, while I've got it here. This is a nice open one, by the way. There's no obstruction here on our freehand. So we're going to do our over here. A nice broad stroke, and even there I could see that it was starting to blend with the paint that's there. Do another one. And if I don't like it, I can just take another brush and quite literally wipe it away. Say I don't like that. All right, look, it's gone. I just took my thumb and I said, nope, didn't like it. We're going to fix it. So much better. And not so shabby for a 2-hair brush that quite legitimately should be in the garbage. Not so bad at all. There we go. There's some more freehand right there. Now I'm going to go back to my first one, where we painted our blue. And first we've got to get our lines on either side of this. Now this is our so-called white has been really thinned down. It's been very much thinned out. Not quite like a panel line wash or anything, but close enough. But so look at that. Because I gave this thing maybe about, I want to say at this point, maybe 15 minutes, roundabout there. And remember, the blue underneath this, the light blue, well, that's just as wet. It's not dry whatsoever. If I was to take my finger, like what I did on that scabbard there, it would all be wiped away. It would most definitely be wiped away. And see how this is where that's staggered. See, it's higher here, and then it's lower here. That's one way to kind of indicate folds in a cloak or cape or whatever. Bam, right there. Now another one of these crazy distorted parts that I'm just going to have to fudge and deal with there. Again, the thing that can happen with digital sculpting, and once again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on digital sculpting. We all love it. I mean, we love the Artisan Guild, right? Heck, well, everybody, GW does it, Reaper does it. It's everywhere. Now we've got to get our little freehand design in here too, and it's going to be the same sort of knotwork pattern here. Let's do this. And we just, remember, that was wet oil paint that we just painted there. That was actually sort of semi-mixing with the blue underneath. We've got layers of wet paint, and yet we are putting freehand right over the top of all those layers of wet paint. There was about 4 different titles for this. Actually, the other one was basically freehand over wet paint. There was all kinds of titles that I wanted to call this. I can only call it one thing. Look at how that just works right over the top. Yes, indeed. Gonna do it again here. As we work our way towards the other end here. Yeah, a little distortion sometimes, not terrible. I know this has got a lot of shininess to it just because of the wet paint. And let's say the white just doesn't do what you want it to. Now I'm going to go the opposite way here, and I'm actually going to do some thicker Payne's gray. And I'm going to... We've done this before with acrylics, right? We've said, you know, we didn't get it going very well with the light side of the frame. Let's go back in there, and we're going to fix that up now. Conveniently enough, that leads us right over here to one of our little crows. Right. Give that a little bit of an outline. Again, I got if it's not going to move or stick or float, I've got to thin it down. There we got some wings. There's his head and his beak. And I even get some chips into that shield there. So now Mr. Crow right here again. These storm crows, I think, is what he wanted them to be called. So there you have it. Now yes, all of this was wet over wet. Where's our other scabbard thing here? Our stripes that we did, all of that stuff. Really fun, wet over wet. All right, so what we're going to do next is we'll try and do some more of the golds here and do some of the skin here real quick for you. So we'll hit that next. So there's a couple of things I'm going to tackle here on this. This is last little segment right now. I want to show you some of the pin line washes, and we'll mess around with just a little quick skin tone here. And it's really nothing terribly earth-shattering. This is actually some of that rust color that's from MIG, and mixed it with a little bit of my kind of a yellow and titanium white mix there. And you could say there's not a lot of skin tone on this to deal with here, but painting on these knuckles with the oil paints, basically going to have to get thinner and thinner, otherwise the paint's just not going to stick there. And you can see that's sticking there because I went thinner. But the ironic thing is to do the final highlights, I may actually have to go a lot thicker. I'm just trying to show you these examples of what does he mean by thicker paint sticks to thinner and all that sort of stuff. That's kind of where I'm going with that. It's the most bizarre. I can't from I don't know, a chemistry standpoint or a physics standpoint, not quite sure with the oils why it's that way. It just all I know is that it is. That's kind of all I know. And dang, I'm using my thumb palette again. Now, as that just, I'm just gonna let that sit there. Remember, we want to give it a few minutes to just establish itself. So I'm gonna throw something on some of these straps over here. We'll just get some of this going. I don't want to forget. Let's see. Here we go. Just throw out a little bit of this green here, just to have it on the palette. Not a bunch of it, just a little bit. Can even let it mix with some of the gold there. That's what I was kind of looking for. Because what I want to do is the knotwork thing across the back of the cloak, a couple other freehand type things. And you can see we're going to just add a few more. Look at that. That's just too flat there. It can't just be that kind of distance. Now we've got a little extra. So we have this, not just light, dark, light, but see how that one's orange and that one's a little bit more green because it's facing towards, well, the ground. And I think, oh yeah, I'm going to get just a touch of the green over here on the shield itself. Not a lot, just a little. And I'm going to get these even a little bit lighter. Good. I still have some of my titanium white over here that is active. And the idea is going to be, that's another area right in here with these leggings and such. It's going to be another spot where we throw in some of those panel line washes or pin line washes. I've heard them both called the same thing. So if I just kind of bounce around between expressions, there's also, well, you've heard me say glaze and wash, and everybody sees those as different. I've tried to define them in certain ways, but then other people still define those differently. So I've given up on trying to say this is what it always is. I'll just say this is what I call it, and just leave it at that because everybody calls something something. That's that would be a very unusual addition to the Book of Wobble, but there you go. Okay, where's my? Here it is. Okay, I'm just gonna throw a little more of the. Now I don't want this to be too thin because if I'm gonna throw a panel line wash or pin line wash over this, I don't want it to be really thin paint because then you are gonna see. You'll see yourself a bit of a mess there. All right, we got that lightened up, and then, like I said, we're going to throw in those. The idea is not to so much darken what I've got here as it is to sort of solidify the lines and some of the linear things that are in there. Now I'm going to go to our different brush here. Again, this is the brush that's down to just a couple of hairs, a couple of surviving hairs. Look at how thin that brush is. You actually just can't buy a brush that thin. It doesn't exist. But it's quite literally been worn down into this perfect, ideal oil painting shape. Look at those knuckles right on there. That's all wet oil paint on top of each other. Of the many things I thought was never ever going to be possible with oils, that would certainly be one of them. Painting eyes, painting freehand, like the stuff we've done here. I thought, okay, yeah, that's the stuff. I'm just gonna have to wait for this to dry, and then we'll tackle it later on, right? do it after everything's dry, do it in acrylics, because that's what you'll have to do. And, well, I was completely wrong in that assumption, and I was so glad to be wrong. Never was I so glad to be wrong about something. I'm just going to just chuck it in a few. Ah, there we go. Nice little, again, another one of these brighter, not just brighter, but also more orange. And then we not just blend it in, but turn it more into a kind of a striation there. Now I need some blue reflection over there for your cloak. Let's do a little bit of knotwork type stuff on this cloak. It's gonna be tricky. The scabbards, it was darn near easy because those are flat. This will be tricky. I mean, if we were doing this in acrylic, it would still not be an easy thing to do. Especially this part of the cloak right here. So let us begin in the usual way, doing the same over and under. And then some under here. Right over the top again. Boys, it's going to be tricky. We got a big fold coming up right there. The good news is, if it doesn't work out, see how that's mixing with the Payne's gray that's already there. It's just like the stripes that we did on the pants, where it's self-mixing. I never thought I'd be using a term like that. I'm going to reduce some of these. There we go. Again, it's super dark for me, but I think it makes it easy for you guys to see what the heck is going on. And here we'll just have to kind of fudge it. So I literally just put the two sides of that same loop there. Now here, let's see if we can't. We'll do an over here. And then the hint of the under, and then just going to have to disappear. There's just no way to get down in there. And it would all be in shadow regardless. Wouldn't matter. This is where things get tricky because I actually need to hold this in the other direction, but because I am right-handed and the way the brush wants to go, that's going to be really interesting. So see right there, we had a brush stroke kind of go askew there. That can happen. But I can go right back in with the Payne's gray and do some fixing of that too. And that's what we're going to do now. I think, yep, we still have some Payne's gray here. This will be of the thin down variety here. What can we, yeah, here it is, okay. You've seen me do this with the acrylic stuff too. This is not unusual. Go back, see, again, just kind of fix up some of these lines here, even while it's still wet. Now we're going to take some of our burnt umber over here. We're thinning that down so that we can start to do some darker things like here. We got to almost essentially put a bit of a horizon line there. I've still got some of my green over here. That's that olive green, which I'm liking more and more. I use that. I really didn't use it very much, and now I'm starting to use it, geez, almost in place of the brown. Now what we're going to do here is, look at this. That starts to get more and more liquid there. I could use one of the pipettes, or I could just take my little container of white spirits and apply it directly. But what I'm going to do now is get some of these boards reestablished. And really, I'm not actually painting this in so much as I'm just kind of guiding the brush over the top of that board. And I think you can see now, because I let the freehand design, again, it's not quite dry, but essentially leaving it for a while, let that, gives me a chance to do this little pin line wash over the top in between these boards. But now it gets really interesting because we're going to water the heck out of we're going to thin the heck out of this, I suppose I should say. So there's your kind of a classic pin line wash there. But now let's see what we can do with some of the wood grains here. And even just in general, some parts of the shield. I'm going to try and make a couple of these boards here, maybe be a little more. So let's see how it's starting to stain those boards. The other thing in the vehicle painting world, really, is they'll call it a filter. And a filter, it's like a glaze. It tints things, but I don't know. They don't want to call it a glaze. Look at that. See how that just almost kind of turns it a little bit more towards the brown. Look at how some of the wood grains, some of those wood grains get a little bit picked up here too. Look at this. We can do even more staining over here. The design is still visible underneath. It's not like it's wiped out completely. It's still there. However, now it doesn't look quite so freshly painted on. So as we get some of this wood grain working over the top now, get design still there. It's just not quite so obvious. And I've got the other one. I sort of kept that one in its original state so you could maybe see the difference between the two and get a direct comparison. Where is my other one here? It must be this one. Yeah, so see, you've got now the one on the left has just some more of that wood grain showing through, and now we're going to, I think I'm actually going to get a little bit of fresh Payne's gray out here. And I just love having in the dropper bottles here, just a drop of it. Even better than the pipettes because, well, the pipettes kind of, I don't want to say, well, they kind of waste it because a lot of it just stays in the pipette and you never get it out of there. Whereas the dropper bottle, much better source of distribution. So I'm going to do a couple of these. Again, the pin light, see, I just dropped it there. I just literally touch the brush to it and you leave it go. Here again, you touch it there. We're not brushing it on, we're touching it on. It's like you're just doing a little bit of a dot, and the dot expands on its own. You let it do its thing, which, as I've said before, I know that's kind of a scary idea, but see on these seams, look at that. It's just going to do its own thing. We're going to do that here as well. I guide it a little bit, but nowhere near that kind of actual brushing on that you've seen. Look at this, right over the top. Some parts of the nutwork even. Over some of the studs and rivets on the shield, I can do those too. See how that just, look at how it's literally going against gravity. It's moving up. Never forget the first time I showed somebody that in person and they couldn't believe their eyes what was happening. It was quite literally defying gravity. So see, here we go again, just a little bit of a pin line wash there. Let it fall in there. Let it do its own thing. Also have to keep in mind the forest bases as well. That's another reason why there's kind of a lot of almost greenish color down here. And just as a quick Right, so you can see just how much greenery is on those bases. And again, with some more of our panel line washes, again, just it does say it's not quite like a glaze. It's similar to it. Look at this, that's still very fresh wet paint. If I took the blending brush into some of this that I'm actually glazing over like this, I could push it around just as if it was applied 5 minutes ago. But see how that kind of sets that all down. It was just, you could actually see the brushstrokes, and all of a sudden I don't see the brushstrokes anymore. And the more you play with the oils too, you'll find these things. I wouldn't necessarily suggest your very first time you're working with the oils doing a whole bunch of this kind of stuff. Maybe like I know I've said this in maybe some private message things back and forth. You take something that has the big cloaks, the really big surfaces, and you just do that and you work your way through to the smaller details later on. I think you'll be a little less frustrated that way. Because when you're trying a new medium and you're getting all frustrated with it, it's never going to lead to good results. I am going to, can hear that agitator again. And I'm going to put a little more of my titanium white out here. Couple things I want to do with that. We've got our axe here. Let's get just a couple of things like on the edge there, maybe even on a part of that stripe. Let's see if we can get some lighter skin tones even here. There we go. Got to lighten the edge of the shield here. And then we're going to do some other lights here. And this is where we've got it. It's not thinned down because I want it to stick. It wouldn't stick in these places if it was super thin. So this is, now it's not white out of the tube, but it's white out of my containers, which means it's still got probably close to 50% of the oil left in there. But now it's actually sticking. If I hadn't gone this thick with it, it was not going to stick. And the whole point, this is kind of the big finale where I wanted you to see that sort of thing in action, where, wow, look at that, the thicker paint is actually sticking. It's important that you see that. Again, or it's just that straight up white out of my containers. And on the other side of that, now I can maybe even think about some of the knotwork being made a little more fresh at this point, because we've toned down a lot of it. Now we can bring back some of it. And not thin down, because if it's thinned down, it's almost going to be like another panel line wash. But see, look at that. We sharpen up the knotwork there just a touch. And yeah, let's get a couple more of our highlights on some of the rivets. Then I'm even going to mess around with the little gemstone here. So we've got our ultramarine blue. So we want the gemstone to maybe be a different color, ever so slightly. We'll do the reflective light thing down here. And because it's oils, we can blend that. Back to the ultramarine blue, and now let's get our, see if we can do that bottom light down there, which is going to require, again, some of the almost straight up white out of the container. There's your little dot there too. And thinking about the helmet, thinking about some of the sword here. Get the other side of this blood channel. Now this is some of the thinner white because I need to get the flow right along this little edge here. There we go. You can see we had a little bit of our sort of magenta slash purple color there, a nice little contrast to the gold. And then I had done, I'm going to look for the, looking for the ones that could have the sleeves on them like this guy, so just bear with me. Is it this one? Ah, could be this one. Aha. Since I've got this little pattern here along the arm, that is another reason I threw the white out here, so we could do that one too. It's tricky because I get lots of undulations here. Lots of those. You could just leave it as just a line. I gave it that little extra touch. And all it was a simple half circle filled with a little dot of the ultramarine blue. That's to basically kind of mimic those little gemstone thing there. Now I'm going to find a decent spot for one of these. And by decent spot, I mean an open one where people will actually be able to look at that and see what it is instead of just, I don't know, it just looks like a random dot of light blue paint. Again, you can see how that covers really well. And even here on the cloak, I'll get a couple of, just a little, look at a couple of highlights in there. It's all it takes. It's really all it takes. Again, I'm going to go with a couple of darks in there. Maybe even get the underside of that skin tone a little bit more green. Let's see. I think we got enough. Yeah, we have enough of our ultramarine blue here to make this happen. Likes, there we go. Another one here. I think there's one on the front. Yeah, one over here too. So I do want to say thanks again for supporting these videos here. I hope that this one gives you a little bit of insight into what it's like to do the live stream. A little conversation about that because, well, I know some folks, well, not some, a lot more folks are starting to try and do this kind of thing because, well, without the conventions and they're not able to do their live instruction stuff, and maybe this gives you some ideas. I'm gonna just blend this here because it's all nice. Yeah, look at that. Now your skin tone mixes with that green there, and we've got our classic sort of green shadow type stuff on our skin colors. So thanks again, everybody, for supporting these. I hope this was useful for you. And I'm almost done with the episode 2 of Dol Amroth, and that's going to be the next one that you'll see. So thanks a lot, guys. I will see you again on the next one.